Hi,
Hello.
thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you give us just a really nice introduction on where you're dancing and then also your journey to getting there? So, your pre professional track.
Sure. So I'm a dancer currently with the New York City Ballet. I was recently promoted to soloist last week, actually. So I thank you.
Amazing.
I got into New York City Ballet in 2012. So I've been in the company for 10 years. And I started out at the School of American Ballet, which is the official feeder school into the
Sure.
company. So I was born and raised in Great Neck, New York, and Long Island, and I studied there for a bit. And then when I was 8 years old, I went to SAB and I did 9.5 years there and went through all the children's levels at the time. And then got into City Ballet at 2012 and have been there ever since.
So, Ashley, in your training, whether it be your pre professional training or your professional, was there a point where you made a connection between, like, hey, the foods that I'm putting on my plate are having some impact on my performance on stage?
Yes, I don't know, it's different for everyone. So for me, it came pretty late in the game. Not until I started dancing professionally with New York City Ballet did I realize, okay, food is playing a huge part into how I excel on stage, off stage, fueling myself, having energy throughout the day. So I think it was really that jump from being a 17-year-old student to a 17-year-old professional. It happened really quick.
Mm.
And from then on, I started educating myself and listening to my body a lot more.
Yeah, which is so common. That age range in general is a very important time for a dancer's career because most often it's around then where they're just making that transition into company life. And so many obstacles come along the way in regards to knowing how to fuel your body. So for a lot of dancers, they might be moving away from home. Maybe in your case, there was a lot of commuting going on, like into the city, and time can be a huge constraint in regard to just making sure you're fueled properly. So, like, what were some of the challenges that you might have experienced, like, during that transition?
So I think for me, the hardest thing was figuring out how to fuel consistently throughout the day. When I had a schedule at SAB, it was basically breakfast and then one ballet class, lunch that
Mm-hmm.
got me the rest of my training. And then I would take the Long Island Railroad home, have a big dinner. So the 3 meals a day type of thing, which worked when I was at SAB. But as soon as I was dancing 10 to 12 hours a day, and I was in the studio a lot more than I was when I was a student. I needed to figure out how to be able to properly fuel myself and to have enough nutrients to get me going throughout hours and hours of rehearsal and then a show in the evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, a very common struggle that I feel a lot of dancers do face in regards to those time constraints. And then, of course, being on the go and having to
Mhm.
say, okay, well, like, what are some of the options that I can turn to just to make sure I'm getting in those calories and like those nutrients? Because from what it sounds, from what you're saying, you had made the connection that food was your energy. You know what I mean? And like you needed this to get through a 10 to 12-hour day.
Yeah, definitely.
Any struggles that you may have faced in the studio that you've had to overcome, whether it just be like performance struggles, maybe nerves, maybe body aesthetics, and anything that you feel you may have struggled with?
I think for me, one of the things I struggle with most, even to this day, is kind of the mental block of when a part is really difficult stamina wise.
Mm-hmm.
In video, translating that into the performance, I get a little in my head from time to time about, am I going to be able to get through this? Do I have enough fuel to get through this piece? Especially when it's a part that's known for being stamina wise very difficult.
Sure.
So even still, I'm figuring out how can I properly fuel, get in enough calories, what exactly do I need to eat, and how soon or far away from the show. So it's something I'm still figuring out, and it's something I think I will probably always struggle with a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
just because as you grow as a dancer, you learn more about your body and what you need. So that's something that I'm still working on.
Yeah, and one thing that really goes along with this is just the idea of self-discovery, which is something I talk with the dancers all the time, in the sense of like what works for us today might not necessarily be what works for us tomorrow, or what works for us during summer intensive season or a recital time. So it's really, this is where it gets really important for dancers to not get too rigid in their eating behaviors, which can happen too, and then lead a dancer to be really stumped when like their schedule shifts, or perhaps there's more rehearsal time, more studio time, and accessibility to certain foods that are maybe that they're comfortable with or not around. This is where the flexibility comes in regard to your food choices as well, and realizing that this is like it ebbs and flows is often what I say, like with our hunger cues and our fullness cues, and it's just a constant process of learning our body. It's never like we get there and we figured it out.
Yeah, that's what I've learned that throughout the 10 years I've been in New York City Ballet. You are always learning and tweaking your routine to see what works best for you and your body, and it's different for every person. There's no right answer.
Yep, which brings us, of course, to such an important point: comparisons, and how easy it can be, especially for the pre-professional trainees. I know this is one major issue that we see with summer intensives, is dancers are being introduced to many new peers at their summer intensives, and unfortunately, comparative thoughts definitely seep in. Was it ever something that you experienced or struggled, and you kind of had to work on just staying focused with your own track?
Definitely. And I think that, for sports in general, people go through this, but also especially for ballet and the performing arts, I feel like we stare at ourselves in the mirror all day. It's a very perfectionist mentality. And so, thinking or doing anything outside of your box is really difficult. And so being at summer programs and even at SAB, just sitting next to people who are maybe eating differently than me or eating less than me, it definitely took its toll, just because we do all compare ourselves inside the studio and outside the studio. So I really had to learn, and even through my professional career, to turn the blinders on and kind of focus on what works for me, because I found that that's what gets me to the highest level of performance, and it's what keeps me excelling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you bring up such a good point, is that, the dancer next to you, their needs are different than yours. You know what I mean? So I hear from so many younger dancers who will say it's difficult, and it doesn't even have to be dancer to dancer comparison. It could be dancer to like family member, dancer
Right.
to academic school friend, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you have to remember that your needs, especially as an active dancer, are so different. Even if it is another dancer that you're looking at and how they're eating, remembering that everyone's body is so different. Dancers can also tend to hyper focus on their art, which is, important, obviously. To pursue this passion, it does take a ton of time. You know that from
Right.
working a 10 to 12-hour dance day. But how are you able to keep balance? Because balance obviously is so important, even in your pursuit of the art.
I I really do try to focus on things that I do outside of work, and not making ballet my absolute entire life, my 24/7 job. And it is hard to do, because from such a young age, you're so dedicated and devoted and you spend so much time. But something that's always been a constant for me is my family. I
Mm-hmm.
love to spend time with my family. I'm one of 6 kids. I'm the oldest sibling. So whenever I can get home to Great Neck and spend time with them, I do. I have 2 Basset hounds. One of them is wait, there.
Oh, so cute.
So I
So
spend a lot
cute.
of time with my boyfriend and my dogs, and we're very chill. So we really enjoy just like a nice home cooked meal, or ordering in, watching TV. So I'm trying to find that downtime, and that balance is what keeps me the happiest.
Yes, absolutely. And I am sure it also helps you flourish inside the studio. You know what I mean? Like, we could get into that track of like eat, sleep, breathe ballet, and then find ourselves burnt out. or we
Yeah,
can actually have like a very active approach in making sure we're partaking in just non-dance related activities as well, even if it's something as simple as being a dog mom and taking your
right,
dog on walks and
right,
experimenting with fun recipes. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be anything
right.
crazy, but it really
Yeah.
does help.
Yeah, that's something I've learned to really appreciate is the downtime because
Hmm.
as soon as you're in, and it's so difficult physically, mentally, emotionally, and it's exhausting. It's a really exhausting um, art form to study as a student or as a professional. So to be able to have that downtime and to take some space away, I think it's really beneficial when you get back in and start dancing.
Hmm. Absolutely. Ashley, how was the quarantine for you? You know, how has this whole pandemic experience been for you and moving through that? Obviously, you just got promoted to soloist, which is incredible. So congratulations on that. How has it been doing this amongst being in a pandemic?
So definitely mixed emotions because at first it was really devastating to have to shut down and to stop doing the day to day. Like I said, dancers are very regimented and we kind of
Hmm.
follow the routine of taking class every day, rehearsing, performing. So as soon as that all came to a halt, it took a lot to get used to. I was definitely one of those people that was doing ballet class in my apartment
Hmm.
um, to stay active and to keep doing what I loved. So it was hard at times, but I tried to just keep the momentum. But also, with that being said, take the time and appreciate how much of it I truly had. So my boyfriend and I actually relocated to his mom's house in Arizona. So we
Oh,
had a change.
nice.
So we spent an entire year there and we had a huge change of pace, change of lifestyle. We were living a more suburban life and it was really, really nice to just go slow down, pause, and just enjoy the small things in life. And I think it made me appreciate my job so much more when I came back. And I felt really rested. And I will always look at that time, as difficult as it was for so many, with gratitude because it gave me a lot of clarity moving forward with my career.
Yeah, and it's such a positive way to look at it, especially the appreciation that it does give for being on stage and having those opportunities to, share your art with an audience is obviously something that a lot of dancers miss during the quarantine. And hopefully we can steadily get back to being on the stage and doing what you obviously love to do.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, any pre-performance rituals that you have that you want to share?
So I sit with a bunch of my friends in the dressing room. The corps de ballet dressing room is packed with
Hmm.
ladies. And it's such a positive and uplifting atmosphere. We usually either put on music or we'll tell stories. And we have actually have like a snack table. There's one spot that has a bunch of snacks. So we all, fuel up and doing our hair and makeup together and just kind of stay calm and happy before the show starts. I really feel like I go to work and I hang out with my friends all day. So it's a
Yeah.
really fun atmosphere.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so nice. And one thing that you mentioned is just having some bit of comfort before going on stage, which so often for dancers can really also help with nerves. And I think
Yeah.
that one thing that a lot of dancers, younger, again, more of the pre-professional dancers fear is like snacking before a performance, when indeed it's giving you energy and very often can also help to ease some nerves, help to provide some of that comfort.
Yes. And like I said, every dancer is different. So it's, we have this communal snack table where we all contribute and enjoy things for before the show. But I am very adamant about having a sizable, like, snack or even I would say almost meal before I
Hmm.
perform because I feel like I really need that fuel to last me until 10 p.m. If I don't get home till 10:30 or 11, I'm not having a real dinner until that time. So
Hmm.
I'll myself a really good snack or almost even a meal before I go out on stage.
Yeah, I love hearing that because a lot of dancers, I shouldn't say a lot of dancers, it's really like a 50-50 split between some dancers feeling either too nervous, too anxious, or just not being able to have something like more significant before getting on stage. So I like hearing the other side of it in regard to you feeling like you actually need something that's significant. I was more like that as well, where I felt like I needed something more significant before I got on stage. It helped with nerves, it gave me the
Yeah.
energy I needed, and then also I didn't have to worry about like energy pick me ups during the show because I was kind of set from
Yeah.
like the beginning.
Yeah. Exactly. And everyone's different. So I have, friends in my dressing room and other colleagues. I always ask, I'm very curious as to how people feel before the show. And some people don't like to feel that super full
Yeah,
feeling before thing, but I personally do. I feel like that mixed with hydration, I feel like I, give myself enough time, but I feel really settled and energized. So it's something that I've figured out what works for me and which things I crave and what what helps me get through the whole show.
absolutely. And that's what it comes down to. What works for you. And that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing I want to drive home for dancers is that what works for one dancer might not work for another. There's not a necessarily like a right or a wrong when it comes to nutrition. It's utilizing self-discovery to really figure out what works for your body. And we try
Right.
and do this obviously with a non-restrictive mindset because restrictions do lead us to burnout. They lead us to injury. And just like you said, keep those blinders on. Remember, this is like your process and your journey.
Absolutely.
So Ashley, I'd love to hear from you. The question I asked all the dancers on here is how would you define what it means to be the healthy dancer?
For me, what means to be a healthy dancer, and this is something that you just touched on, is not feeling that restriction and letting yourself cater to whatever your body needs and whatever your mind, your soul, whatever you feel like you need in that moment. That's something that I've always stayed true to as a person. I absolutely love food, and it's an exciting and enjoyable experience. It's something I would never want to limit,
Mm-hmm.
even post dancer life. So it's something that I try to live my life by, and I think that having a little bit of everything's really important. And that's something that I could, advice that I need to give to myself, because there are some food groups that I crave more than others, and I have to pay a little bit of attention to that. So I think that for the healthy dancer, it's really just about focusing on all groups and
Mm-hmm.
not limiting, not restricting, and just really trying to enjoy eating and enjoy fueling, because that's something that I think we take for granted. And that was something, touching back on the pandemic, something that I really learned to appreciate, because like you had said, it's very easy for dancers to get burned out and to get exhausted. And during performance seasons, I tend to feel a little run down as we get to the end. But when moving to Arizona and having a very relaxed and a much less active lifestyle, it gave me the time and the tools to appreciate eating in a way and
Mm-hmm.
appreciate how much I, love to fuel, and just to it gave me the time to create really good habits for myself that I'm trying to instill moving forward now that I'm busy, really busy again.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that because one thing that I was inundated with from messages from dancers at the start, like we're talking March of 2020, the amount of messages that I got from dancers that were, I'm not moving as much. Do I have to eat less calories? Do I have to eat less? And my response to them was always, step away from that mindset, focus on inclusion, and actually take this as an opportunity to start experimenting with intuitive eating, where you can
Yeah.
actually, you have the time now, right? You have the ability to relax a bit more, not be so on the go because we weren't going anywhere, and
Hmm.
actually start to learn your hunger and your fullness and what satisfies you and what your preferences are. Because what tends to happen is diet culture tends to get very loud and it impacts our choices. You know what I mean? Like if you're
Right.
going to grab for something, all of a sudden you hear that chatter. Is this good? Is this healthy? Protein, carbs, fat, whatever it might be, right? It gets really loud and it makes it really difficult to actually say, I have some really great memories with this one specific food. For example, what
Right.
just comes to mind is like macaroni and cheese, for example. Like that could bring a lot of nostalgia memories to a dancer. But if they have fears around carbohydrates, around fats, those are going to inundate them and really impact on that ability to make that choice. So we got to like strip that away, strip that chatter
Yeah,
away, so we can
absolutely.
start to tune in on what satisfies us, and embrace what you're saying beautifully, is just embrace the joy of food.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ashley, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been so nice chatting with you.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.